forward stroke. So if you're doing that, you're expending twice the energy necessary, and you're wearing a dull blade with old teeth. It's like a plane. It's like a plane. So you need to bear down to make a cut on the forward stroke and then relax on the back stroke. You don't have to pick it up, set it down, but you don't want to rub the surface. And you always want to hold the workpiece as close to where you're filing the vice jaws as possible. In other words, I'm working here. I don't want to grab it like that. If I grab it like that, I just get all kinds of vibration. And it's annoying to get up. So keep your point of filing near the vice jaws. So it's this transition that I'm concerned about right now. Having roughed out the round, I can also see how bad that crack is. Whether I'm going to ever get out of it. Fine. All right, so that's sort of starting to get square on one side. Once you start doing a lot of filing, you get very picky about your files, how they're treated, what they get used for. If you do non-ferrous work, if you're doing stuff out of brass, copper, so I'm trying to get this thing relatively symmetrical. It'll distort when we make this bowl more, at least a little bit. So I don't get too fussy, but this is one of the things that you'll be learning too, is how much of this prep work has to be done again once the, you like that sound? Has to be done again once the thing is sunk into the hole, because that will distort it, and so guys have to go back and work on the transitions, the edges and all once more. So that's kind of sort of close. Needs to come down a little bit more on this side. There are ear plugs, by the way. All right, that's pretty close. Now,
go ahead. Once you bang out the cup,
that's all you should be using. In other words, you should not be putting a straight edge. It's eye judgment, getting used to discerning where the deviations from the straight are in friction. And then sometimes you'll see, oh, I got it, it's concave on that side, but it's convex on that side. So it's really a bend that you're looking at. So you might, at some point, simply go to the anvil and say, oh, I can save myself a little bit of work by just doing that. So the one side is a little wobbly, but not too bad. My major issue is going to be right there in the middle. And it's got, actually there's a bulge right there.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a real major issue, if you go to the round portion of a file, if you have a half round file, and bear down, the pressure is on a more concentrated area, so you can be more aggressive. These are all things that, in the filing, you'll learn what you want to try to accomplish at the anvil to ease your filing task. Because I can tell you all day long, towards the handle straight. Don't make thicks and thins, don't make hollows and bulges in the edges. I can tell you that all day long, but it won't make as big an impression on you if you have to file those things out. Then you understand, oh, that's why I was told to make the handle straight. Tend to elevate the old timers and think that they did wonderful, perfect work all the time, but they didn't. There's enough pretty crude or coarse stuff that has survived to suggest that the average of the market was not great. I would have an asymmetrical leaf shape on the end. I have to do something with that. I have to either just file off and trim it, or there might be a way that I can shift that point over a bit. If I hammer in the corner, that's going to push the whole thing, pivot it in the direction I want to go. So I'm going to try that first, see if I can get some correction. This is just two straight lines converging. looks kind of sort of like it's on center. We can now worry about the transition. I use one is just to take advantage of this kind of concavity there and make sort of a rounded transition. So you make that concave. And if you want to leave the little point, you can, or you can round that over too. But you have to now make the same concavity on the opposite side. Make a match. Change it a little bit. Okay. So you can leave it like that if you want. Or as I say, you can round those over. I like to round them over so it's more leafy as opposed to spear pointy.
The ladies from town like that leaf shape, so.
That's right. It's foliate. So it means it's more rococo than federal. The spear pointy thing would be federal. That's my story.
I like it.
Okay, so now this does have a burr all the way around, so just be careful with it. Don't run your fingers along that. Still got, I can feel it. There's a little bit of a waste right there. So I would like to thin it out some in the upper half of this. Ideally, and I do mean ideally, you should make one of these spoons complete. It's the forging and finishing in about an hour. You can figure ideally 20 minutes to make the forging, 40 minutes to do filing on the finished work on it. Now I'm going to get rid of some of this burr. I'm not doing it in a super controlled way. with it in my own shop, or would I continue to fuss with it? I would fuss with it some more. It's, for our purposes, I think it's fine. Its shape at this point is not inconsistent with a lot of pretty coarse country work that was done 150, 200 years ago. It has some issues. It's got a few little thick and thin spots in the thickness of it. It's a little waffly along the edges, but it's not something that jumps out at you. Your eye is drawn to the unevenness. So I think that's probably okay. It looks like we got rid of most of the kind of alligator finish in there. So that's good. And it's now time to pick a face and a back. Most of this work is two-sided. One side meant to be observed, the other side not. So, now you have a polished fork. Looks pretty good, hanging by the mantle. The back side is left black. Has some hammer marks on it. Not finished out. You see this even in the highest style ornamental ironwork. You know, a gate in front of one of England's most stately homes. Even the gate has a public side and a private side. So there are things, there's joinery that's cleaned up and obscured from the public point of view that's left uncleaned up and unobscured from the other side. So it was part of the mindset that this work often had a front and back, or a public side and a private side. So this, seeing as I beat on that some with the peen of my hammer, that's going to become my back side. So I now need to smooth this front side, the face of it. I'm not going to worry about the bowl area. That's going to be left black. But we do want to smooth up this. And having determined that one side is to be smooth, polished, do this in a couple sections. This is cross-filing, filing across the surface. Doing it on a diagonal because it's convenient more than anything. And my effort is to get rid of all that black oxide surface. I'm certain that some of these vices will grab better than others. If you're having trouble holding the work, one vice, check out another one. I'm using the round side because I'm not, at this point, real concerned with making the surface flat. I'm scrubbing off the surface, and the round is more aggressive. So the low or commonest grade of ironwork would have just been left with the black oxide finish on it. A medium grade would have been just cross-file to just to get rid of the black, make it shiny. Try to cross-file an even texture, but it's just cross-file. So when most of that black is gone, you're ready to do the final finish filing, which is draw filing. And in that, we're going to orient all of our filing scratches along the length of the object, in this case, our tasting spoon. Because of the asymmetry of a file's teeth, if you push the file along like this, with the handle in your right hand, the most aggressive cut is on the push stroke. If you flip it, the most aggressive cut is on the draw stroke. So you can get different effects by flipping the hand that you handle. So I use both techniques, cutting on the draw, sometimes cutting on the push. But I can see that it makes a slight difference in the texture created. And your goal is always evenness of texture. So you need to go back probably at the end and do the whole thing one way.
So do these guys get to keep the tasting spoon that you forged?
Go for a nice scroll look, because a lot of them are just sort of bent, kind of teardrop shape. So I'm going to just bend that over and bend it into a look like we use an angle. I mentioned yesterday that case furniture, cabinets and drawers, is expensive. It's something that's in your parlor, not in your kitchen. So kitchen utensils are stored on the wall. Almost always have some obvious way to hang. So then after having bent that, we're going to come back here and sink this bowl. Now, Derek was telling me this morning that he always sinks these cold. He's welcome to do that. I've sunk big ladle bowls cold and pain in the neck, and it's slow. Sinking this bowl is simply you're done. But let's do that now before lunch. I'll leave it. want to take multiple heats over and over and over again if you can avoid it. You ought to be able to sink this in 1 or 2 heats. Certainly 3 heats maximum. 3 heats I can sink a ladle full. But the bottom part of the heat, the last part of the heat on this, it's going to be basically black. So you want to get a good, even heat, but be aware that the metal is thin and can overheat in the blink of an eye. Then you have a crispy edge. That's what will happen. You'll burn up the edge. So my goal is twofold. Is to sink the bowl and bend the handle and to offset the handle. And I'm going to do that all at once. Also, you should be aware, and you'll see this probably as you work, that the metal tends to be a little thicker right here in the bowl, but it's not going to shake very fast or as easily right by the handle. Be aware that you can move all around. I mean, I see people winding themselves up, and all they have to do is move. That.
The handle is naturally rising when you're not hiding it.
It's a little flat. You've done everything else up to this point pretty well. There's usually not a whole lot to be done here. Then once you've got the high spots worked out, you can go back and slightly chamfer